I swear, this book is the main reason why I made it through winter lockdown in my country. Hey everyone, my name's Envy, and I talk about Carry On by Rainbow Rowell way too much. I mean, seriously, don't make a drinking game out of this. Now, even though I mention this book in almost every single video I make, I never explain why I like it so much, and that is the result of a really stupid defense mechanism that I developed in high school. Because when I was in high school, I was in a group of friends that didn't appreciate reading and fandoms as much. So they were fine with me shouting, "Oh my god, I love Harry Potter, I love the Hunger Games," but as soon as I wanted to have this in-depth discussion about the politics in, let's say, the Hunger Games, they were out. They would look at me like, "Shut up." And because of that, I have always restricted myself to saying, "I like this book, I like it, you should like it." And because of that, I kind of restrict myself to saying, "I like this book, it is awesome, I love it, it makes me happy, period." But today I am leaving that attitude behind. I'm leaving my comfort zone, and in honor of the release of Any Way the Wind Blows, which is the final book in Simon Snow series, I'm sad already, I will tell you why I love Carry On for 5 main reasons. Let's go. Please don't pin me down on this because I actually missed my lecture on postmodernism due to a terrorist attack on the city where I used to go to university, so that was not fun. But I feel like this book kind of encapsulates postmodernism, which states that there is no such thing anymore as something original because everything is derived from something else and everything is kind of a symbol for something else or taken from something else. And that's exactly the case with Carry On. Time for a history lesson. If you're not aware of the lore behind the actual writing of Carry On, you might not know how this all works, and even people in the fandom get it mixed up sometimes still. Simon and Baz started their lives in Fangirl, basically as stand-ins for Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy, because the main character Kath in Fangirl writes what is dreary fanfiction about those two. But yeah, you can't really use Harry Potter as is for such a book. So Rainbow Rowell came up with Simon Snow and Baz, and once this book was done and out in the world, she started thinking about what their story would have looked like if she had written about Simon and Baz. So she went and did exactly that, and I love that. That is the kind of shit I would have pulled back in high school when I was still convinced that I was going to be a published author someday. I absolutely love that she started out like parodying Harry Potter, just mimicking what was going on in those books, and then gave it her own twist, and it turned into something that is so much more than Harry Potter. That whole approach to the Chosen One narrative, going from some fan fiction in here to giving it her own interpretation in that book, which became a trilogy, I love that. Now, if you've been around on this channel for a while, you might know that there's one thing I mention almost as much, or maybe even more, than Carry On, and that is linguistics. I love linguistics with all my heart, and because of that, I also love the magic system in Carry On. I have this bookmarked because I love this part so much, in which the magic system is basically explained with the words. Words are very powerful, and they become more powerful the more that they are said and read and written in specific, consistent combinations. The key to casting a spell is tapping into that power. Not just saying the words, but summoning their meaning. And that, my dear people, is basically language variation, which affects spells, and language ideology. What is the accepted standard language? How does that perpetuate our speech patterns? Can we use that for magic? So this whole entire magic system is exactly what I love most about linguistics. Looking at how language is used, why is it used that way, and why does a certain word just pop up and dominate the language for a decade? How does that affect their spellcasting? I could go on about this for ages, but I just want you to know that a magic system that is based on linguistic concepts that I am passionate about is just the best thing I ever encountered in a book. One of the criticisms about Carry On that I hear most often is that the plot is kind of messy because the world of mages is facing the insidious humdrum, which is the dumbest name for a villain ever, but hey, I didn't choose it. Then there is the war with the old families and also the war with the dark creatures. And, well, there's a romance plot, of course, and everything is just tangled up and messy, and Simon is involved in everything without doing anything, basically until Baz shows up, which is fine. But to some people this is quite annoying, and I understand that because it does feel at times like the book is lacking focus. But personally, I actually feel like that is very realistic, because any conflict in the world right now is not about good versus evil. There are so many different factors playing into conflicts that we can't just say, oh well, it was a bad guy who wanted to blow something up and then the good guys came. It doesn't work like that in real life. So why would it work like that in our books? It doesn't work like that in Carry On, and I think that is one of the book's strengths, because it also allows characters to be morally grey, or well, I wouldn't call the mage morally grey, but we get to explore how far people are willing to go for what they believe in or for what they think is right. And the whole way this affects, for example, Penny's family is very interesting. I could have an hour-long discussion just about the way ideologies play a role in the family dynamic of the Bunces. Is awesome. Sure, there are characters in that book who have certain takes and views that aren't exactly the most acceptable right away, and you don't know where they're coming from. But that is because there is so much going on in their world that we have to learn about, and then we have to navigate these different ideologies. And I like it when a book is written in very clear, simple prose, but still offering me these topics to think about, the ideologies and the way people follow what they think is the right path, only to find out that it wasn't. And I think that that is one of the main strengths of the book, how the characters are all human, and the magic is there, of course, but the main conflict is not caused by magic or by a good versus evil dynamic. It's caused by someone doing what they thought was right, by someone having a huge head and thinking, I'm gonna solve everything. I love this. I love this book so much, I keep saying that. I'm not the biggest fan of comparing Carry On to Harry Potter all the time, but in this case I'm going to have to do this. Because one of the main reasons why I now prefer Carry On is the way it built up the world of mages as like a community inside the normal world, normal with a capital N. When you're part of the world of mages, you're also part of the normal society. You go to a normal elementary school, you go to a normal university, you're probably going to have a normal job unless you start working at Watford or you're a magical doctor or a magical psychologist, whatever. But you're heavily invested in a normal society. And Harry Potter never gave us that intertwining of worlds. I really hated that, even as a kid, because I knew that the magical community wasn't large enough to sustain itself when it came to things like food or labor. And in Carry On, that whole problem is solved, because they're basically part of our own world. And because they are sort of integrated into our world, it makes me feel like this everyday boring life I'm living is a bit more magical too, because like I earlier said with linguistics, the way I use language directly affects their way of having magic. The way I am in this world would affect the world of mages in some capacity, and knowing that they are actually like around us, I know this is fiction, but you get my drift. Knowing that they have fairly regular lives outside of Watford makes me feel like there's a bit more magic in our regular boring world as well. Now this is the most difficult part for me to talk about, because it's based on headcanon, but also because I'm not very sure about how I can talk about this. Because I have a certain label that I'm not yet ready to talk about on the internet. But I want you guys to know that it's a mental thing, and it manifests itself in certain characteristics that caused even teachers at my elementary school to tell me to my face that I would never have friends and I would never be loved because of the way I was born. So it's pretty tough growing up with the label I have when that is the support you get from the outside world. And when you see characters on TV and in books that are like you, characters that I connected to, being described as psychopaths and sociopaths, that's a very tough situation. I have never seen my label represented positively in media until I read Carry On. Now I want to be very clear, I'm not insistent on Baz sharing my label, definitely not. But those same characters that caused an elementary school teacher to tell me that I was basically unlovable were characteristics I also saw in Baz. And Baz is basically the most beloved character out of the entire series. So reading about a character who was like me in so many ways and who was not a psychopath or a sociopath or heavily regarded in negative light. Okay, he's evil, but that was about it. That made me feel so much better about who I am. And, well, once I found the fandom on Instagram and noticed how much they love Baz, not despite these shared characteristics, but because of them, I felt this tiny spark of hope inside myself that I haven't felt in a long time. Because if people can love Baz, who has characteristics that manifested itself in me from my label, then maybe people will be able to like me one day too. So that is my 5 main reasons for loving Carry On. It's about representation for me. It's about representation of the things I love. It's about giving me topics to talk about, and that's like the main outlines. I tried to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. But there's so much more I could talk about. I could talk about the banter. I didn't even talk about the romance. I didn't even talk about my favorite quotes or anything. I still have to call one of my friends because I promised her months ago that we were going to have an in-depth discussion about Carry On, and then I got, well, eaten alive by my thesis basically. That's all from me for today. I want to wish everyone else in the fandom a happy release day for Any Way the Wind Blows, and please do not send me any spoilers. It'll probably take months for me to read this book because in the first place I'm not mentally ready for this series to end. The quotes Rainbow Rowell shared on Instagram just broke me, and the third reason is that my local library doesn't have a copy yet, so I'll have to wait for that. Anyway, I will see you in the next video, and hopefully I will not have been broken by the end of the story yet by that time.